Good morning, everybody. This is the Personal Playlist Podcast, fondly referred to as the P3 on Voice Ed Radio. I'm Noah Daniel. I'm so excited to have Nick Janna here on the 51st Personal Playlist Podcast. Nick is currently the high school deputy principal at the International Community School in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. After a long, tumultuous journey in education, from high school dropout himself to teaching incarcerated youth, then at-risk and behavioural students in non-integrated classes with a public school board, to mainstream teacher and eventual administrator, Nick has always had an interesting relationship with school and education. Through reflections on his own experience, he received an M.Ed in Cultural Studies and began unpacking the importance of making connections with students through relationships, music, and technology. Nick was an NTIP, a new teacher induction program trainer and mentor in Ontario, presenting on the impact and importance of relationships created to drive classroom leadership, formerly known as classroom management. He has presented internationally on the importance of intentional and positive relationships building to improve student success. Currently, his passions lie in personalization for students, supporting meaningful risk-taking, and servant leadership. Welcome to the show, Nick.
I am so pumped to be on your show. And I'm actually happy that I'm 51, not 50, because that would have been like, I don't know that I would have been settled for that. But yeah, 51, I'm happy and pumped. How about that, though? 51 shows, Noah. Are you kidding me right now?
I know, it's pretty incredible. I couldn't have imagined it, and I'm really glad that you're here. I've seen so much of your work. I watched your Mad PD presentation, and I've been seeing a lot of your writing on LinkedIn, and I'm excited not just to be in touch with Ethiopia on the P3, but really to be in touch with you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing over there.
Well, it's nice to talk to someone who's back home, who also gets the education system in Canada, because I mean, international education is its own, I would say its own beast, but I mean, it's really, really different than the education that we're used to back home. So, and when I say back home, I mean, yeah, like back in Ontario, where, you know, like you get a curriculum document, it's a book, and it's like, okay, there you go, that's what you're doing. Whereas here, it's, is it Common Core that we're working on today? Is it NGSS standards? Like, is it C3? So not having that consistency of, you know, I'll say something to you like knowledge and understanding, and you'll be like, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
So it's definitely much, much different being in an overseas school with an overseas curriculum. The fact of the matter is we're educators because we want to be here for students.
Yeah, and you wanted to go there. I mean, it was a choice for you. So that's interesting. What made you decide to go to Ethiopia?
That's a great question. I'm like one of these, like, not just talk. I'm like an action kind of person. So a couple of years ago, we really started to get into this, like, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're working on these projects at home and you know, fundraising and talking about it in class and this, that, the other thing. And I was like, I have no idea about these places that we're actually talking about. And I mean, Ethiopia, and not to date myself, I mean, like, Ethiopia on TV back in the day was, you know, that of, you know, very skinny, malnourished children, and sure. You know,
do they know it's Christmas?
You know what's even funny about that is that's a joke amongst Ethiopians, because
oh God, sorry.
The fact of the matter is, and again, out of ignorance, is they're Christian Orthodox. So because they're Christian Orthodox, they don't celebrate Christmas in the Western time. Like, December 25th is not Christmas here. It's much later, and Easter is at a different time, and the country is split.
Wow, holy colonialism, Batman. Like, that was really ignorant of me. That was such a great point of reflection, though. Wow.
No, but again, I did the same thing. I said the same thing, and so that was the experience. Ethiopia is 50% Christian Orthodox and 50% Muslim. Like, this is the problem. This is the problem that I had, was that sitting in a classroom back in Ottawa saying like, oh yeah, we know what, we're going to solve these third world problems with our first world solutions. And then thinking of like, no, man, I want this experience. Like, I want to check this out. I want to check international schools. I want to understand what is service learning about. Anyways, we could do a whole show on that. But the fact of the matter is, yes, I did come to Ethiopia. I'm very, very excited to be in Ethiopia, and it's been an eye-opening experience for sure.
It's amazing. We talk about experiential learning for students, but experiential learning as educators really allow us to get out of the silo, the physical silo, but also the mental silo that we can often be in, not having those shared experiences and not having the perspective. And it's interesting when we're teaching the sustainable goals and we're really looking at how we can make a difference in the world. If we don't have a sense of the world, we can't do the kind of justice that we want to do. So it sounds like you're walking the walk. It's amazing that you decided to do that.
And see, I'm a big firm, like, I've met people firsthand who work for the UNDP in the Sustainable Development Goals that are like fully supportive of, teach SDGs. And the fact of the matter is, and I've been giving it a little pushback even on Twitter and stuff like that, teach SDGs, vital, important, is a great opener. The fact is, we need to do action SDGs. If we want change, then we actually need to do something about it. An old anecdote that I was told when I was young was, two frogs sitting on a log. One decides to jump in. What happens? Nothing. He only made a decision. There was no action. And so coming here, seeing it, being a part of it, I think it was a lot more actionable for me, and it made more sense to me, and I was able to make a stronger connection to be here, live it, see it. And I mean, the focus on the idea of, back home, 30 hours of community service is part of the graduation for an OSSD. I get it. It's vital. Service learning here is a total different jam, like a totally different jam.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about what service learning looks like there.
So, for example, we'll have like I'll give you one example. We have a Gila class. So there's a class that you're required to take. It's called Global Issues, Local Action. So these students take this class, and we really encourage them to find a global issue and how can they do global action, right? So like there's global initiatives, and so this is like a real simple thing. A group of students decide we're going to go to Kenya and we're going to clean up the beaches in Kenya because the beaches are so dirty in Kenya with bottles and pollution and styrofoam that from surfboard or what just floats to the beach. So this group of students goes to this and with their garbage bags and start picking up and throwing garbage away. And these four older women come up to them and are yelling at them, cursing at them in their language. And the translator is telling us, don't touch the bottles. And we're like, what? Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Why?
Because that's their income.
Their income is green bottles is for sweet honey. White bottles is for bitter honey. So what they're doing is they're the ones going to collect those bottles. And we come with this really, like you said, colonialistic idea, like real big push for, how are we going to help them? We got it. How are we going to help them? And that's not even the mentality here. Mm-hmm. I'm probably about 5 kilometers away from the best coffee you've ever drank in your life. Okay, I'm 5 kilometers away from it. So we go and we see the coffee fields, and I'm like, dude, like, are you kidding me right now? You have the best coffee I've ever drank in my life. Like, what you need to do is you start to mass produce it, send it west. People are going to pay crazy amounts of money for it, and you're going to make a ton of money. And he looks at me and he smiles and he's like, but that's not what I want. And I'm like, well, what do you want? He's like, I want a job to work and feed my family and enjoy my life. And it's so funny how even me, who thinks like really altruistically, like money isn't everything and all this, and the fact of the matter is this guy really he wasn't interested in, like expanding his business to make it a multi-billion. So it's through these types of service learning activities that we're really seeing and understanding, like, again, one, the sustainable development goals, and really getting in touch with what are third world problems. Is famine a third world problem? There's a lot of teff here. They eat teff. We eat rice and pasta back home. So it's neat to think that these people are survivors, and they will do what it is that it takes for them to survive. They're not looking for handouts. And I think seeing that firsthand is something that I really needed to do. And my initial really, really wet behind the ears to come to Ethiopia was one thing. Being in Ethiopia has like kind of really grounded me, and and again really influenced some of my song choices as well.
Yeah, well, let's get there, Nick. So the
Yeah.
idea of this show is that people bring 3 songs. One that's nostalgic, one that reflects your identity, and one that picks you up, lifts you up, inspires, or motivates. And you were really excited to bring me 3 songs plus a couple of others that we're not actually playing, but we're going to talk about. Tell me about the process of preparing for your P3.
So the day you asked me, I have a notebook. So I'm not always tech or writing notes in my iPhone, whatever. I have a notebook, and I started to write out all of the bands that I could name, and I wanted to start there and kind of like whittle my way down. by probably I was probably at about 2,500 different bands that I could name, and I was like, how the hell am I supposed to pick 3 songs? Like, how is that even possible? I pride myself that I listen to 3 hours of music a day. 3 hours of music a day, every single day, no matter what. That's like my mindfulness moment. I have my headphones in, walk to school, walk home, before bed. I'm musically inclined. My mom was very musically inclined, kind of hippie, like Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, like this kind of thing. And then my father, as a good Lebanese Arab man, solid to one type of music, just listen to Feiruz, which is like that old Arab kind of chanty, full orchestra kind of stuff. So there was always a multitude of different types of music that was being played at the house. Wow. So music was always a part of my life. I think self-medicated ADD also. Listening to music kind of quieted my brain a lot. So there was always something playing, whether it was back in the day with the big headphones or the little pods or like the orange Sony like walk around cassette players. I was always making mixtapes, mix CDs, and this jazz. So to pick a song, 3 songs was probably the hardest thing that I've had to do in years. I would say that it's probably one of the hardest things. Naming children was easier than this.
Really? We'll have to get to that in the next conversation. We can have the what's in a name conversation. But in terms of settling on 3 songs, let's start with your nostalgic song. How come that one? What story does it tell for you?
So I also wanted to keep it in the frame of education because if I didn't create a subject kind of like box in the direction I was going to go with the music, then I would have been all over the place and scattered. So the first song I picked, and without exposing it really, is I hated school. I don't know how I made it through school at all. I had a very bad experience. K to 8, I wasn't a good student. I was oppositionally defiant. I didn't like teachers. Teachers didn't like me. I was the kid that, needs to pay attention in class, like real disruptor, like that kid. I was totally that kid. And by the time I got to grade 9, and I was like, I don't even want to go to high school. I'm done. Is I met a teacher, and I really want to honor this man. His name was Laird Evans. He was a teacher at Hillcrest in the OCDSB. And he's a drama teacher, but for some strange reason ended up having one section of English. And so I can't even remember the book that he had told us. It was like Raisins in the Sun or like Flowers for Algernon or something. And fantastic books. But at the time, being so, pushy, I was like, I ain't reading this book. It doesn't do anything for me. It's not personalized. And he asked me, and I think he was the first teacher that ever asked me, well, what are you interested in? And how can I grade you on what you got in your brains there, Janna, if you're not going to read this book? And I said, give me something that's interesting. Like, give me something that I shouldn't read, or like a banned book or something. And he kind of smiled and laughed and giggled and went away. And the next day so imagine a milk bag, the top cut off the milk bag, a book inside with it sleeved over, and a clothespin, like a clothespin from like a clothesline. And inside this milk bag is Dalton Trumbo's Johnny's Got His Gun. So I'm looking at this book like, what does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with anything? And he says, during the McCarthyism, during that time, this book was written. And this book was written and banned because it challenged the idea of democracy. And I said, like, who cares about democracy? He's like, no. He's like, I want you to read this book. And so I started reading it, and I started getting into it, and again, listening to. And it was around that time. So I guess looking at like the date, we're talking like, again, dating myself. This is like 1988. I'm watching probably Much Music. One of these, like, what was the metal show on Much Music? No, what was the metal show on Much Music?
I don't remember, and I'm like, I feel like I should remember it, because was it Power Hour? Was that what it was? Something like that.
Just before like the Pepsi Power Hour.
Okay.
Let's just settle on the Power Hour.
Okay.
And a listener, whoever listens to this, can correct us where we're wrong. But it's the Pepsi Power Hour with, some girl dressed like in leather jacket and like little crop top. And she's like, next up, fresh new vibe from Metallica 1. And I was like, oh, Metallica. I love Metallica. Like, a big fan, and I'm breaking your anonymity about, I know how much you like Metallica too. So when the new album came out and Metallica 1, and it starts real slow, like and it's black and white, I'm watching the video and
had you seen the movie of the book before this? Like, did you pick it up? Okay. Woo! Go, keep going.
No, I hadn't, not at all. So as it's like, oh, my breath is out, with like, Dad, what is democracy? Well, son, and like that. In the music video, it had that narrative as well, and I was like, tingly. I was like, this man either had some crazy foresight that this was going to happen, or he knew enough about me that he wanted to build that educational connection in order to get me and extend me to a point where he attached something that Janna was known for: headphones, ball cap, skateboard, don't effing bother me. Like, if you need me, I'll be sitting in the front door of the principal's office and the chair's there. Like, that's, and as far as nostalgia, every single time I hear this song, it reminds me of, one, how this man extended himself to me in connection. 2, how much I love Metallica. And 3, it opened up my interest of reading. So the whole book of Johnny's Got His Gun, Metallica uses scenes from the movie throughout the video.
Yeah.
It blew me away. It touched me. And I would have ate out of this man's bare hands, because he was the first person in my whole educational life that really extended themselves to me. So that's why the most nostalgic song that starts everything as far as my educational journey is Metallica 1, without question.
You know what's interesting, the layer there is like, the guy, he's in World War I, Joe Bonham, and he's hit by a landmine, and the explosion takes away his limbs and like parts of his face, and he's like a prisoner in his own body. And so there's layers to that of what you must have been to this guy who's like trying to give you an out with the one sense that you were willing to open up your mind to giving him. So let's play it. How could a man lose as much of himself and still have a life? And this whole deliberation about like 1,000,000 to 1, but that leaves one. And that's really the essence of the meaning of the song. Like there's so much in there. It must just, and then he's that one. Like there's layers and layers to that oneness, but wow, it takes an incredible teacher to be that one who becomes your lifeline to learning.
And like, I mean, even like metaphor, he could explain through using one song, through like, you know, the storyline of like, you know, introduction, rising action, climax, like the whole like story plot line, and like the denouement, and the song is indeed that journey as well. And I think like the whole idea of the metaphor of being frustrated and angry, because as the song continues, it gets angrier and angrier and more frustrated. But then there's almost a moment of peace, like landmine has taken my side, taken my speech. It gets really, really aggressive and angry. And I felt the song, but it also made the connection to the book in the sense where I'm now reading a book where I'm in it. And I can point to a human being who I could attribute this to do this for me.
That's amazing.
This is grade 9. Grade 9, I was good. Grade 10, I decided school wasn't for me anymore, and I left. So yeah, I think knowing my definition of what education was and what it needed to be was really like in its nascent stage and born through music and through relationship setting. And I think being troubled and frustrated and like leaving my home at a young age, that there was always in the back of my head, you know what? I'm going to get into education to prove people wrong. And that's and as negative as that might sound, that was the fact at that time. It was, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to smile and nod. And then I realized the trick of school, which is, what is the power that a teacher has over a student? It's if not anything, it's the assessment and the grade. That's it. If I see a rubric and can follow the outline of that rubric in order for me to get A's or 4s or 7s or however marking scheme you want to do, realizing that I was better at playing the game than I was at, really learning. I'm self-taught kid who did that for the rest of his high school career, through the rest of his undergrad, who in my B.Ed did it, and it wasn't enough. And I guess that was also the main reason why I did my M.Ed. I really wanted to focus on troubled, at-risk youth and making and finding ways that we could make connections to those kids. So through my research doing a master's degree, I visited a lot of like youth correctional facilities and stuff like that. And it was really interesting, the things that they told me in regards to how their lives could have been different had they had, 1, a strong relationship with somebody, 2, not a lukewarm answer, a yes, a no, a 3, like scold us when we've done wrong, but show us that you care and that you're willing to teach us another way. That didn't come from a teacher, professor. It came from kids like me who couldn't put it into words, but then had the tools to be able to elicit that from kids, angry kids, frustrated kids. And throughout, and tying it back into music, it also really changed the direction of the music that I listened to as well. I was listening to a lot of like really angry, like metal and like punk rock and really like aggro and like sick of it all, and like these like New York hardcore bands that were like ready to go out and like talking about loyalty and like gang life, and we'll fight if you look at us in the wrong way.
It's a perfect segue talking about that, and the song you chose for your identity, and the band, and how they came out of the whole idea of the positive mental attitude and the idea of definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. I mean, you figured out what you wanted because you knew what didn't work for you. You listened to other people's stories, and you found the sense of purpose. And I can only assume that that's where you're going with your identity song, but I don't want to assume because I have you with me. Tell me more about your identity song and how it connects to that story.
No, that's 100% it, because I still like that aggressive feel, like that energy charge, that like the massive energy that comes out of this song. I think the thing too is because at the time when, it was either like pop music or dance music, that punk rock music was kind of like for the kids on the fringes. But I kept on finding like every song was like really angry and a lot of frustration, and listening even to the words to most songs, they were like pretty angry. And then I heard this song from Bad Brains, and there's no question that this changed the direction of the music that I listened to, one, and it also changed my brain capacity. And to be full-fledged PMA all day. So the next song I selected for my identity song was, or is rather, Bad Brains' Attitude. It's a short little punch song, but it talks like, we got that attitude, and it's not like, and we're jerks. It's like, we got that attitude, we got that PMA.
Yeah, and it's
Initially
interesting.
hearing it, I didn't even...
Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, initially when I heard it, I didn't even really know what PMA was or what the movement was. And like the straight edge movement was starting, was like people being proud about not drinking alcohol, not doing drugs, not smoking, not being promiscuous. And it kind of fit into that straight edge kind of positive mental attitude thing that required, back in the day, no internet, face-to-face dialogue with other punk rockers saying like, what did he just say? What is PMA? And so that's why I use this as my identity song, because I eat, sleep, breathe, and if I was, if I believed in anything on the daily, it's positive mental attitude.
Amazing. Just going back to your other examples, you know, you think about the rawness of metal and you think about the anger and the whole idea that that vibe is about that positive mental attitude and ensuring that inspirational thinking and that aspirational thinking that can be really spiritual when it's shared with people.
And that's it. And sometimes I have to remind other people, like, man, it's just about like having that positive mental attitude. Like, this is well before like growth mindset and like
right.
all these really fantastic ideas around. It was as simple as having a positive mental attitude. The other really amazing thing about Bad Brains that I really took to is that a lot of the punk bands that I was listening to were you know, they were generally, like culturally, white American bands, and the members of Bad Brains were Black dudes. And growing up again at that time I was in Ottawa, and my friends, it was much more of a reflection of my friend group than a really like white base or like very like Unitarian one type. There was multiple people that identify with, wow, what are these guys doing? And I again, it had to do with skateboarding. It had to do with, you know, we got that attitude. It had to do with inclusiveness. It had to do with like equity, things that I really wanted to perpetuate and wanted to have a belief in, almost like indoctrinate within myself in moving forward through like my, you know, my educational and my life journey. So I think as far as identity, yeah, there's other songs that I definitely had really close to pick. Like, I mean, you know, there's a song by Strung Out called Better Days. Like, some days I'm up, some days I'm down, some days I don't give up about anything, you know, and it's like kind of like a more of a like a one day at a time kind of song. And then, you know, listening, I could name a bunch of Smith songs or Sonic Youth or Beastie Boys songs, but this one I think really highlights the fact that it became my philosophy in life. Like, it's tattooed on me. I made stickers. We made it, like, there was a group of us that were really kind of like, if we would see bullying happening, we were the first ones to not be bystanders and be like, what are you doing, man? Like, that's not cool. Like, or like treating women with respect, like these kinds of things. And it all really stemmed from that, just changing the neurotransmitters in your brain by taking it in as a personal philosophy.
Well, sometimes those neurotransmitters don't work as well, and you need a motivational song. So I'm going to take us to your last song, the song you called a motivator, and something, I don't know, a little closer to home. So tell us a little bit about that choice.
So there was a principal friend I met at a conference in a public school back home. Her and I, every morning, we would send each other songs as motivator songs. So like songs like to get us through our days. She was a principal and I was a teacher at the time, but we really hit it off, and we kind of had that same philosophy of like, you know, it's about the kids. It's about like personalizing learning for the kids. It's really about what are we doing here? It's for students. And so, the song, I was really torn between the song because I was thinking of like a tragically hip song. Being so far away from home, you just hear like Gord Downey's voice and you're just like, yeah, man, that's right. Like that's a big motivator, you know, or like, a Drake song. Like it was a real toss up between the Wherewithal, which is like a good pump up song, Drake Energy, which I don't know that it would have been such fantastic to put on your show because there's a lot of cursing. But so this really embracing now and being in Ethiopia for as long as I have, it's much more of like an Africana vibe. And when I see it being played or hear it being played, I see how happy people are, and it makes that energy is then put on to me. So the next song that I did as my motivator, and I know at the minute I hear it when you play it, a huge smile is going to go on my face, but it's by Mr. Easy, and the name of the song is called Leg Over.
Zagadat, same time body 10-10. It's your boy.
It's E. Kelly.
My baby, they confuse me, yo, with that bomb bomb. But she got the guy where they send her money from London. She they see me like a Johnny just come. Yeah. My monkey they walk it, baboon he just the chop. Me I go chop all the washing, as long as you give me my passion. Baby make you know they rush me, I beg you make you treat me with caution. Leg over. My baby give me leg over, hangover. Baby she dey give me hangover, hey, leg over. Oh no, me give me leg over, hey, game over. She dey come give me game over. Hey, I dey confuse you, I dey confused when you turn around, baby you dey make her confuse. You do all like a Cameroon, mesmerize the boy and baby make her confused. Commando, you be commando, you dey command the boy, you the overload. Yeah, I know fit stand alone. I must call my guy, we for rendezvous. Yeah, I go chop all the
That's fun. There's a little bit of everything in that song, isn't there?
Well, see, that's the beautiful thing about also being in Ethiopia, because it's such like the house of reggae, right? Like Haile Selassie was big into like supporting, bringing back like slaves from the United States, and he was a big supporter of Jamaica. And the fact of the matter is Haile Selassie, who was his Imperial Majesty, and is named in, I mean, every other reggae song, which is like, you know, Selassie, Rastafari. Haile Selassie's birth name was Ras Teferian. So the whole Rastafarian movement actually began in Ethiopia. It was almost usurped by, you know, the Jamaicans, but he invited Jamaicans to come and live here, and he would give them land. And so what happened is through that creation of like, it's not a traditional like African kind of like vibey, like kind of offbeat song, but it is kind of poppy. At the same time, it's honoring that whole idea of like, yeah, man, and you know, Mr. Easy, leg over. He's just talking about like talking about his portion, and it's a good dance tune, and it's the meaning, the words of the song isn't what it's about, but it's more about that feeling, that jam, and that vibe, where the other songs are a little bit more, you know, like lyrically inclined or songs that I could sing along to. This one is more of a feeling song. And so again, where the song that you believed that I was going to play was Wherewithal, because it's very Canadian. And again, listening to Gord Downey, that song, and the live at Woodstock version too, where he's just like mumbling in his poetry at the same time. I was like, no, you know what I want to do is I really want to honor where I am right now, a popular song right now here, and a song that brings not me a lot of joy and motivation, but a song that brings a lot of people, a lot of my coworkers, a lot of my friends here. When that song goes on, everybody's dancing and like winding, and it's just like a good feeling song.
That's amazing. And that's the whole point, right? Is to take that song category and make what you want from it. And sometimes you need a good feeling. But if I strung your 3 songs together and I told a story, it would be really about settling into your own and finding your groove and being able to celebrate all that you are and all that you give education, and really making sure that it, in the same way that it needed to be personalized for you, you're always thinking about a student-centered approach to everything that you do. It's amazing, Nick, and I'm so happy to hear your voice then, and the prominence of student voice and all the work that you do. How are you feeling about your 3 songs?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I just want to, and I don't think you get enough shouts out. Every episode that I've listened to, you managed to either tie the songs together so beautifully because you can see the correlation between those songs, or you created it. And I don't think that I would be able to highlight it as well as you did. And I think that when I hear you talking to a lot of other people in education selecting songs, you have this real talent to be able to find what is really truly going on, and why people are, vouching for these as the winners of their songs. Like, I mean, I could have said, I could have, went with like, Sati as a motivation song to just like put back and kick back. But no, you definitely found the connection between the songs. And I'm feeling, I'm not one of regret. I'm one of, learning from mistakes. I don't think I made a mistake selecting any of these songs. I think that in this moment, on this day, in this hour, that these are definitely the songs that I think, validate me and are the songs that really highlight where I'm at in my life right now and what I'm thinking about on the daily. If you want to revisit this in like a year from now on episode like 151, I would love to do that, because I probably could do completely
Maybe that's what I'll
different
do
songs
for next year's anniversary show. That's a fun idea, Nick. Let me think about that, because I've had people have a conversation with me. But you're right. This is a snapshot. And it's about the moment, and it's about being present. And that's really the only reason why I'm able to do that, is all I'm doing is telling your story back to you, because I've been present with you on this beautiful journey.
This podcast we've gone from, many different platforms to now it's through the phone platform. The Ethiopians don't always love having the internet running all the time. So if someone does shout out or has a question, I would love to answer. I answer every single question that's ever sent to me. I comment on everything. I'll like it. All I merely ask is for a little patience, because of the situation that it is. But again, the Ethiopians do it. They do it that's their life. And so it's become my life. So if you want, if you're looking to get a hold of me, want to talk to me, have questions, or just shout out, feedback, anything, at Teach Mr. J on Twitter is definitely the best way to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to add that and a couple of other things that you posted lately that I thought were pretty awesome. So Nick Janna, thank you so much for coming out to the Personal Playlist podcast. Do you have anything you want to add before I play you out?
No, man, I'm just so pumped that I was on your show. I was so excited since episode 5. Probably I've been like and again, I love what you post. I feel that we definitely made a connection over the years of being like following each other. So I am really the one that feels privileged after this podcast. So thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay, well, to be continued. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us on the P3, the Personal Playlist Podcast. I'm Noah Daniel. This is Voice Ed Radio, and I hope you have a fantastic day.